All right, welcome again to our monthly El Dorado Hills Community Council meeting, held this date Monday, July the 11th. And so with that, I would like to have our leadership team, please each identify yourselves and what your role is very briefly, and then we'll also recognize the District 1 commissioners and committee members who may be present. So Mr. Vania, which you don't like that, but John.
Yeah, John Vania, Planning Commissioner for, yeah, John Vania, Planning Commissioner for District 1 and the Infrastructure Lead.
John Davey, I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee, and we review proposed development projects in El Dorado Hills and provide resident feedback.
I'm John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor. We're still trying to recruit more Johns to come and join us up here, so we have a full quorum, but no. We'll work on that. So Cindy.
I'm Cindy Munn. I'm Supervisor Heidel's assistant, and I do the community information and outreach for the council.
Richard Ross, Dick Ross, and I engage in matters dealing with good governance and how county government works or doesn't work.
Very good. So we'll just note that Glenn Krakow did let us know he's not going to be able to attend tonight. Chief Lilly is out on strike team calls. He won't be here. And also Angie Platt will not be here this evening. So we're going to be missing 3 of our team members, our leadership team members, but hopefully we'll get them all back once we settle down a little bit after this summer series of events that are happening. You hear the sirens and big fire in Yosemite, the Elvira fire, down between Calaveras and Amador County. Electra, thank you, the Electra fire. Fortunately, the last I read, that was 85% contained, so it seems like they're getting really a strong grip on that and expect to have that fully contained within a day or 2. So with that, let's go ahead, and there's nobody else online, right? Yeah, okay. So with that, we'd like to recognize any committee or commission members who are present, either via Zoom or in the room. So Tita, would you like to share with us your role?
Tita Bladen, El Dorado County Commission on Aging. And I just want to put a plug in for August 5th, El Dorado Hills National Night Out.
Yes.
We'll be there for senior services and the Commission on Aging.
Excellent. I assume Cindy probably has that on upcoming events. We get to that. Okay. All right.
Just
All right.
realized that.
Okay. All right. All right. And then I don't see anybody else on Zoom who's a committee or commissioner, so we can move beyond that. We'll go to item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Are there any members of the leadership team who would like to propose any changes? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as submitted. So we've adopted that. We'll move on to item 3, public comment. This is the opportunity we want to extend to anyone in the community, either on Zoom or here present in the conference room, to be able to share with us their ideas, thoughts, comments, complaints, whatever, of something that's not on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda, we'll hold that till a later point in time, but any general comments, questions, queries, you're welcome to do that. So we'll start with Maria. Thank you, Maria.
Hi, I'd like to, my name is Maria White, and I would like to plug an upcoming event. It's part of the Master Gardener Public Education Program. It will be on July 23rd, which is a Saturday at the El Dorado Hills Library. And there's ample parking, free admission and all that. And the, let's see, this month's talk or presentation will be on fire resilient landscaping. And of course, there will also be an emphasis on El Dorado Hills. I mean, we Master Gardeners often talk about fire safety, fire safe landscaping and all that. And there's all this talk about the various zones that are involved, but honestly, nobody really here has to talk about extending way past basically our front yards because we don't live on large properties. But there's a high expectation this will be super interesting, and we'll be co-presenting.
Okay. The 2 of you are the
Oh, no, I'm not the one talking.
Oh, okay.
No, I
All
just
right.
wanted to plug it.
I got it.
I'm going to be talking about deer resistance and the cottage garden, but that won't be for a while still. So you can forget about that. Okay, so what is her name? Kit
for camp.
Kit Verkamp who's very knowledgeable on the subject, will be presenting, and Tim White will be assisting.
Excellent. And the Fire Safe Council, either local or, I see still Steve Willis is on the call or on the Zoom meeting. So is the Fire Safe Council a part of that? Because obviously that's part of the big educational thing that all the countywide Fire Safe Council and then the locals try to distribute information. So if you haven't linked up with them, I would encourage you just to reach out and let them know about, because they can spread the word. So.
We can do that.
Okay, good. So, all right. Any other, yes, please. And have you got a microphone there close to you?
Oh, you know what?
Right here.
Okay. 'Cause we've got these portable microphones, and if we don't use them, then people on the Zoom can't hear you. So that's all we want to make sure you can be heard and be recorded.
I just wanted to introduce myself as a newcomer to El Dorado Hills here a year now. My name is John Taylor, spent 4 years down in Fresno and Clovis, and appreciate the openings that the various public and CEOs do to get newcomers in. So I'm looking forward to being helpful where I can and just trying to get to know everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your email and stuff. And we're going to get you connected with some great activity. We'll just have to figure out what it is, right? So.
I appreciate that. I'm not going anywhere for a long time.
All right, thank you, John. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone in the room, and I'm not seeing any hand raised. So we'll go ahead and move beyond public comment to item 4 and regrets. Our guest speaker, Karen Coleman, she was excited about being able to present. She started presentations in other organizations. Her aunt had a severe stroke on Saturday. And so she's helping her mom. Her aunt is her mom's younger sister. And I guess it's one of those very debilitating strokes. So she's there helping her mom and trying to help her aunt. And so she had to cancel out on us. But we'll get her rescheduled as quickly as we can. She asked about next month, which we'd identified Health and Human Services. So potentially we could shift them back one, or we could have Karen come back in September if that's necessary. But we'll get her back on the calendar when things settle out for her. But she was disappointed she couldn't come and speak with us and share the information she has, because they've been doing a really good job, in my humble opinion, at our Treasurer Tax Collector's Office to try to preserve as much of the monies that are special districts, counties, and all kinds of other organizations that contribute to that county pool. But it's all invested together so that it doesn't just lose its value in a small CD or bank. And every day they're looking at where's the place to invest now. And with the things changing in the market, interest rates going up, they're making a lot of shifts and moves. And so I think we all appreciate and need to understand some of that. There are some significant restrictions on what government agencies can do in terms of investment. They can't be high risk. So there's a certain category of investments you can make and others you can't make. But Karen can share all that with us when she's able to attend the meeting and give us her presentation. So we'll look forward to that in the future. So with that, I'm going to move on to item 5, Supervisor Communications. Just a couple of things here. The Board of Supervisors has provided new direction to staff to prepare 2 separate ballot measures, one for the west slope of the county and one for the Tahoe Basin, dealing with transient occupancy tax. There are 2 different levels. The level in Tahoe is higher than the level in the western slope, but we're seeing a lot of VHR applications on the western slope. Those are starting to become more popular in part because Tahoe has a quota. In the unincorporated area, the Board of Supervisors decided 2 years ago we needed to establish a maximum, which is 900 VHRs, because we were getting a lot of residential complaints about their neighborhoods being taken over with every other house being a VHR. It's a significant investment opportunity for some people. And so we had to establish a maximum, and then we also established the separation distance. So any given VHR has to be 500 feet away from another VHR. With some conditions that can modify that, but we're trying to make sure that the local community neighborhood is not violated by people going in and out every day or every weekend, and then loud noise and partying. And people need to have a good time, but you shouldn't be disruptive in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. So that's going to be on the ballot. One of the things that was discussed that I'm insistent upon is we need a citizens oversight committee to make sure that people know that tax will be dedicated to road maintenance. So our DOT is very much behind this, but the funds would go directly to DOT for road maintenance with an oversight committee of citizens looking at it, because there's always a concern, well, when the government gets stuff approved and we start paying monies into this, a bond measure or a tax, how do we know it really got to the right place and didn't get diverted somewhere? And that's where the Citizens Oversight Committee is becoming more important for for people to have trust and feel confident, I know that money that was dedicated for this is going to the right cause. It isn't being redistributed somewhere else or hidden. And so that leads to annual audits and other things, which I think are ultimately pretty simple to do if you do them on an annual basis. So I think that will be, both of those should make the November ballot. And we will have a chance to vote on, obviously, the west slope and not the east slope. So it's separate voting districts based upon polling precincts and those kinds of conditions. So we'll get to vote on the west slope and not the Tahoe Basin or east slope. Central El Dorado Hills, I get all kinds of email all the time. What's going on? When's it going to get to the Board of Supervisors? And the answer is we don't know. Since the Planning Commission hearing and the decision to recommend disapproval by a 5-0 unanimous vote of the project, there's a kind of a pullback that's going on, and people are starting to talk. I think that the proponent in particular starting to try to figure out what can we do to change this no to a yes. And most of that to stay within the existing processing, which includes the CEQA analysis and all those things, would probably revolve around the development agreement. The development agreement is where more community benefit can be added, and it doesn't really change the nature of the CEQA or anything else. So with minor modifications, there could be some enhancements to that development agreement to bring more resources to the community itself. There's been talk about, obviously, a golf course coming back, whether it's 9-hole or 18-hole, and I've seen support for both of those. 9-hole seems to be the one I hear more about, because that's what the CSD has somewhat discussed and proposed, as opposed to a full 18-hole. But that would be certainly a community benefit that's not currently within that development agreement. The other one that's been talked about quite a bit is an aquatic center. And that, again, is something that would be a significant community benefit, because it would include basically a center, obviously gymnasium type locker rooms and that sort of thing, probably a shaded cover structure to provide solar panels. So there's a whole lot of things you can do with that kind of a concept. And we've been involved with a group talking about that, because I swam in high school, and I'm a real fan of making sure kids have that opportunity to get in the pool and do some competitive swimming or just have fun. And we don't have enough resources in this community with pools, with the single pool that the CSD has. So we're looking at how we might get involved with that, which might even include the high school district.
So if something like that comes up, you know, one of the options you could do is send it back to us.
Right. And that's something that may happen.
Yeah.
It depends on the degree of changes that are being proposed and the board's general receptiveness of whatever it is that's in that offering. But more to come on that. So unfortunately, we don't have any new news, but when we get something, the one commitment that we've made is when we hear that it's coming, been calendared to come back to the Board of Supervisors, we'll make sure everyone who had sent us emails about it get a response, letting them know personally when that date has been scheduled. Certainly the news media will have that information. Probably a press release, my guess, with the magnitude of this. So a lot of things to happen when and if we get to that point. It's possible the proponents could say, okay, we're done. We're not doing it anymore. This just isn't the right time to try to bring this forward and get a vote of approval of the Board of Supervisors. We don't know. It's their determination, not the county. So whichever direction that goes, I just hope we get something of community benefit out of it, substantial, when it's all said and done. It isn't just developed as some kind of a recreational facility that the community didn't get a voice in. But because there are existing rights within the current zoning that do allow entertainment, outdoor in particular type settings that don't require discretionary review, my understanding. So maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot. So more to come on that if and when we get information. It's a lot of conjecture right now. Nobody knows where it's going to go. The third one I wanted to mention is that the Board of Supervisors is moving forward with the homeless shelter. We've now focused on Perks Court, which is a county-owned facility. The county DOT, Department of Transportation, bought it several years ago, associated with Missouri Flat Interchange expansion, and they needed a place to store equipment, gravel, and so that was a property the county purchased under the DOT funding to be able to do all that to facilitate the Caltrans County interaction, improving the interchange. Since then, the DOT hasn't defined anything of use for that property. The Board of Supervisors has talked about surplusing it, but this looks like an opportunity to see if we can make something useful out of that with the expectation is it's a temporary shelter unless, it turns out that things can be facilitated and we can work with the community on something longer, and that would take, a payback to DOT for what the funds are that were invested. This came out of road fund monies, as I understand it, which is our road maintenance for the most part. So if it came out of road fund, purchase the property, if it is gonna be a long-standing operation, then that monies associated with the value of that property should go back to DOT and the road fund. So that's my commitment, is make sure we don't lose track of that. And that's why it was talked about putting it on surplus list and allowing other agencies to compete for it. And that's a whole different process. So, and part of that is the wraparound services. A lot of people are concerned, well, if you just have a place, you stick homeless people in, they'll be wandering the streets and there'll be drug deals and everything going on right in the plate facility. But no, this is actually a controlled process. We have contracted now with Volunteers of America, which is a very well-established organization to provide navigation center staffing, and they have their own set of rules. And their set of rules are things like, you don't come into this shelter if you've got drugs on you. You don't come into this shelter if you can show that you're under the influence, right? If we can prove you're under the influence, you don't come in. So those rules are what we're talking about imposing, which is imposed by Volunteers of America. That makes it much easier for the county not to have to establish a bunch of rules. It's their standard operating rules when they operate a shelter. And the way we're gonna try to do this all before September is by using sprung steel structures. So they're basically these sprung steel with tent enclosures over them. Large buildings have been used for a number of different homeless centers, a big one in San Diego. But you can get them different sizes, different configurations. Some of them are set up to be restrooms, laundry rooms, that sort of thing. Some of them are bunk bed type assemblies. So we've actually contracted with a company to help as a design build type of process, so that it's a turnkey thing, that once we get the infrastructure set in place, and the big things with the infrastructure is we're gonna need to bring in new electrical supply. It's gotta be substantially different than, I think it's actually a 200-watt service that goes into there, split between two houses, 100 watts each. So we gotta get more electrical power. PG&E is saying that won't be a delay. They're gonna prioritize this. Spoke to the PG&E representative, and that's a commitment from them. And then the others, we're gonna need to get more water supply into the facility, because I think it's got probably a 1-inch water line going to the two houses, or 2-inch, split to 1-inch. Gonna need a lot bigger water supply when we're talking about 60 people in a shelter. And that's the nominal planning that we're doing, 60 homeless to be sheltered in that facility. And then the third one, which is usually the most troublesome, is the septic or sewer system. There is no sewer system nearby that you can connect to. So, and the septic system was built for two houses, not sized for anything like this. So we talked about having to bring in bladders to collect that wastewater and then haul it off, and none of that sounds pleasant to me. But our facilities is working with this contractor because evidently they've got experience in having to do that as well. But that's the temporary nature of this. Really, if it's gonna go forward as a more permanent site, then we've gotta get serious about getting all that sewer connection infrastructure in place. And that's working with EID, and who knows how long that takes. So a lot more to come, but I just wanted to reassure everybody that the Board of Supervisors is moving forward as fast as we can with the goal of trying to get something opened up in September this year. And in large measure, that's driven by the city of Placerville, because they have an ongoing transient homeless population that are in hillsides, and the fire risk, as you can imagine, in Oak Woodlands, with all the stuff around, and homeless people who don't have access to a lot of facilities. They start fires for heat, right? To cook food or whatever, to heat food. And then they're not always so good at putting them out, as we've experienced with campers and other things down around Folsom Lake. So that's that fire risk that's really driving us to try to get that done as quickly as possible. So the city of Placerville, El Dorado County are in strong collaboration in terms of finding the right location and make it happen. And there will probably be other discussions to come about where a more permanent site is, because we're looking at a couple of properties we could purchase that would be, I think, much better suited for a long-term facility as opposed to a short-term shelter.
John, you kind of described it. This Perks Court.
Yeah.
Is it 2 residential houses on so much acre? You don't have to go too deep, but.
It is 2 houses down in the lower level, but there's actually 3 levels to it. There's kind of an upper level where it looked like you used to have a lot of the gravel storage and stuff. And then there was a middle level that used to be like parking of vehicles or something. Maybe John knows how they were actually used. And then this lower level where the 2 houses were that were been totally abandoned. all of the electrical wiring's been ripped out of the housing because the value of copper, you know, it's just, they gotta be leveled out and kicked out of there. And it was the septic connection for those two houses was the only connection on the site. So it's a relatively unimproved piece of property. And I think it's probably around 6 acres total. It's a pretty good site between the different levels. You got it there? But there is a steep hillside part of it, but, you know, that's what facilities is trying to do in terms of working with this contractor consultant that's presumably really good at doing this stuff, and we'll see if we can't make it all come together. So more to come as that makes progress, but a lot of people are not in favor of a homeless shelter in El Dorado County, but you know, clearly the Board of Supervisors, at least on a 4-1 vote the last time we went through this, we're in support of continuing this, so we'll see how we end up here.
Will there be some sort of evaluation to determine, you know, what, if any, negative repercussions could happen for the surrounding business? One thing that comes to mind to me is that nice expensive bike path that we built that connects Missouri Flat to Placerville Drive. That's gonna be, if this goes in, it's gonna be substantially used, and concerns with the citizens that that's gonna be overused by the homeless population and those kind of things.
Right, so surveillance cameras
Yeah.
are gonna be a big part of it, right? Because you gotta watch who's coming and going. Because I will tell you that, when we ran the Project Room Key up in Pollock Pines, there was a lot of accusations about how the homeless had destroyed this and that and the other thing. But it was homeless that weren't part of that shelter. But everybody I've talked to and everything I've been able to figure out, it wasn't homeless associated with the shelter. It was homeless that were already in existence before the shelter even came into play.
Or things like you got a hotel across the street, that kind of stuff.
Right, but anytime you have that kind of facility, there's gonna be the inclination to do drug deals and all that kind of stuff. That's why you gotta have a surveillance camera. We're gonna have to have more law enforcement. But again, Volunteers of America's got a long history in this, and that's who we're relying on, because they go through a lot of extensive training. So they're actually hiring people, staffing up, going through the training, getting ready to open probably mid-September, or late September, somewhere in there.
Well, and I think what needs to be emphasized, I've talked to you about this before, is temporary, you know, and it's geared around helping these folks to get back on their feet and not providing these long-term care when they're not making any progress and stuff, so.
Part of the navigation center is for them to make progress.
Right.
And the other part that is a big part of this is going to the shelter is a by invitation only process. You can't walk up to the navigation center and say, "Hi, I'm homeless, I want to be sheltered tonight." So there is a selective process that's being used to make sure that the people going into the homeless shelter have the greatest needs. People with severe medical conditions or age restrictions, handicaps, mobility issues, those are gonna get the first choice for good reason, right? As opposed to maybe a very young homeless person that's just kind of lost their way. But that's gonna be all determined by Health and Human Services and working with the Volunteers of America. So it will be a screened residency. And I think that's important because you can't just have everybody that wants to spend the night there. It's a longer term shelter. It's not one night, right? The commitment is, we want you off the streets for 3 months minimum through the fire season. And hopefully we'll be able to find another form of housing or get you into a situation where family, friends, somebody can help you, whether that's within the county, outside the county. Because that's the one thing we found out with the statistics that came out of Project Home Key, or Room Key rather, was that huge success rate in getting people out of there and placed in housing, number one, but also in getting them placed with the relatives or friends that didn't even know, in some cases, about the homeless situation of this relative. And that's made a big difference as well. But the statistics on that, once they come out, are pretty incredible, how successful that was. But then you'll read a lot of stuff in the social media that's just false information. They don't bother to put out facts. When you challenge them to show me the evidence, they don't have it. But unfortunately, that's what we're doing. So there's a
Well,
stigma.
And you guys are gonna have to go above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to alleviating those concerns, you know, and that misinformation. Because I think most reasonable people wouldn't have a problem with that if it's done properly.
Right. Right. And our hot team, the homeless outreach team, the sheriff has, is gonna be an integral part of all this. They're gonna help us. So with the screening in particular, so I look forward to a very successful program. Is 60 homeless sheltered people enough? No, but it's a good starting point. And from there we can build. And it's all being done with federal and state money. There is no general money, general fund money, or county monies going into this first round. It's all grant monies that's coming from the state and federal government. So people complaining, you're using my tax dollars to give some drug addict a shelter? No, it's federal and state money, which is still your tax dollars, but it's not something the county controls. We're trying to get some of that money we put into the system back to help people who can really be helped. That's the way I look at it. So anyway, more to come on that as it evolves. And I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of newspaper articles that come out of Placerville about what's going on with the shelter provisions, but, okay, and then the fourth item is I just want to let people know that our current CAO, who's been in that position for 7+ years, I believe it is, and originally hired on as the chief financial officer under our sheriff. He started there, served there several years, couple years, 2 to 3 years, and then he moved to being the director of health and human services, and I think he was there for like 3 years, and then he was ultimately selected to be the CAO. So he's been with El Dorado County closer to probably 15 years, but only about 7 years within the CAO's operation. But he has announced his planned retirement, and he's talking about the spring of 2023, so he's gonna get us through the end of the calendar year, through the first part of the budget planning. But we've opened up the recruitment as of last week for the replacement CAO. In talking with the current CAO, we have 3 well-qualified candidates already, and that application doesn't close out till the middle of August. So to get 3 very well-qualified applicants this early in the game is a good indicator. So hopefully we'll get more. And he said there was 11 other people that applied that didn't meet minimum qualifications, so they were not included in that list of candidates. So 3 out of 14, and hopefully more to come. So I think we're on a good track there. And the idea was to be able to hire that person and have their start date be the first of the calendar year. So there's at least 3 months roughly with the current CAO and the CAO staff, the deputy CAOs and stuff, helping that person learn the organization, meet all the department heads, understand the functionality of it, which I think is a reasonable transition point. So we'll be paying essentially 2 salaries in that time frame. But to me, it's well worth it to get that handoff and get good continuity. And day one, you're moving down the path as opposed to trying to figure out what your job is. So Donald will be great for this. He will. He's been an outstanding CAO, the best I know of in El Dorado County ever. And so anyway, more to come on that as well, but we are moving down that path. I also mentioned the fact that we have been recruiting for a new Director of Health and Human Services, and that has moved forward very favorably. The committee that has been looking at that has actually selected some top candidates, and the Board of Supervisors will be meeting with one of those candidates in a closed session to just kind of do the meet and greet thing and make sure there seems to be a good fit and connectivity. But that's good to know that we have 2 really good, very close competition in terms of the Director of Health and Human Services as evaluated by 4 different committees. So when we did one with LAFCO, the county did it in double, right? 4 different committees in terms of interviews and stuff. So I'm hopeful that we really get a great person in that role, because that is the largest organization in terms of personnel employees within El Dorado County's Health and Human Services. And part of that is we're talking about breaking up Health and Human Services, so because it's so large, into maybe 3 organizations, all dealing with health, but different elements of health. So that's a discussion yet to happen with the public, with Health and Human Services, presented at a future board meeting, but we are really looking at if we're going to replace that director, the overall 3 of these other lower level divisions, that we plan that out now and then see if they're consistent. Their thinking is consistent with that kind of a framework. And there'll be some other changes with organizations that are now under Health and Human Services that will move somewhere else probably. So anyway, more on that later. So any questions or comments that I probably can't answer at this point on any of those subjects?
The point in time count, did we ever
Yes.
get those numbers back?
We did.
Are they public yet?
They are not public yet.
Okay.
So they're still going through the certification process. They're internally distributed, but they needed that final step. I think HUD has to approve the point in time ultimately. And I don't believe we received that yet. But we should.
Yeah, I know other jurisdictions have started publishing, so I was just curious the timing on that, because that does inform sort of the need for
Right.
what the effort might be at Berks Court, so.
Right. And, those numbers are different than what the sheriff reports in terms of homelessness. This is really a different definition of what constitutes homeless, so you really have to understand under what definition people are being registered through the central registration system. So there's those differences as well. But anyway, we'll get through all that, and hopefully we'll make some positive progress. Yeah, Tim?
Question and comment on the Central Alberta Hill Pacific Plan. Has the applicant formally filed with board of supervisors?
They don't need to.
I
There's-
thought
there-
that if it was rejected at the planning commission, they had to do an appeal. Is that not the
Well,
plan?
no, this is
No.
a recommendation to the board.
Right.
is all we
Since it
do.
involves a general plan amendment,
Oh,
it has to be a board decision.
Right,
So the
okay.
planning commission can only recommend, this is a general plan amendment, a specific plan, a new specific plan, a modification of the existing specific plan,
Rezone.
and a zoning, rezone. So all the elements are there that absolutely has to go before the board before anything can be finalized, so.
And the comment is with respect to the development agreement, we've all seen in the past where development agreements are negotiated literally at the board of supervisors meeting. And there's some give and take. And I think you just have to be wary of that because if that happens, and we saw it happen on John David, remember Bass Lake Road, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Supervisor, negotiated something and there was no opportunity for the public to comment. So if the negotiations happen at the last minute, it really deprives the public of their
Ability,
ability,
their opportunity, yeah.
It sort of goes against the transparency thing. If something's done at the last minute and it's approved, and after the public hasn't had a chance to even look at it or think about it or comment on it. So that's just a concern.
But that's what the planning commission hearing is all about, the draft, right, subject to modification. And that's why we have APAC,
But
Making
it's
a
subject
recommendation.
modification That's the concerning part.
Right.
Because, yeah, the draft.
but anytime you're dealing with a negotiation, you can't make a negotiation a public process. Because it'll never go anywhere, it'll never close, so.
But like when we have the draft, development agreement, we had some insight to that. And I think to Tim's point, I think you're thinking probably about Bass Lake North with,
Yes.
the applicant at the time, Supervisor Frenson said, hey, we need a bike lane. And the applicant went, yeah, I'll do it. Well, it's $1 million. The applicant didn't know that. The community doesn't know that. So, and then the applicant comes back a couple of years later after they get annexed into EID and says, hey, that parking right is too expensive now because they have to do this bike lane. So he doesn't want to do the parking right, so he wants to reduce it. So those things, but it's to the benefit, the
The answer to
supervisor.
that can be no, I mean,
Well,
that's the simple.
sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It was in this case.
I would think that if any proposed changes to the development agreement come up, it's gonna be posted prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting, which will hopefully give them ample time to review it and provide comment.
And it can
Hopefully.
go back to the planning commission if we decide
Right.
this is just too big a change, we need to have the public input to a greater extent. Let's send it back to the planning commission, have another hearing with the new draft, revised draft, right? But ultimately, the board of supervisors will set those terms, whatever they may end up being,
Yeah, and
if any.
also the point too, the opportunity to negotiate at the podium, which the applicants always say they don't like, but they want to get their project approved. But it is an opportunity for the supervisors to weigh in because they're not part of that development agreement process. So at least if you have supervisors that are truly looking out for the community, but then again, it's not something that's considered or analyzed as part of the project if you're throwing in a bike lane at the podium, so. No, but I anticipate if there are changes, we'll see them like we did with this last one. Fingers crossed. I'll get on the phone with Mr. Thing,
Who's this? You guys
yeah.
talking about my dad?
Any other comments, questions on this item, this set of items, supervisor communication?
The TOT opportunity. So Raphael did his presentation today at the Taxpayer
Okay,
Association.
good.
I'm probably going to be asking him to swing by virtually or somehow at an APAC meeting before the vote, just so we get an idea of how that works and impact it. But it is, I think it's important to delineate, there are two components, east and west on this. So it was a pretty good discussion he had this morning. So I would anticipate that this will be something the community wants to hear about.
This is something the board of supervisors wanted to put on the ballot before, but it was based upon the whole county. And so that lesson learned was that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, given the significant differences of usage. And again, one of the things that the Board of Supervisors has changed the definition of what TOT taxes go for, impact from tourism. That's the big change that's happened. We're not talking about promoting tourism. The first terms in there, that both Sue Novosel and I insisted upon, was impact of tourism. Because the city streets and also the county roads in Tahoe get impacted hugely by the VHR traffic. Then you have all of the snow removal machines and everything else that goes into that tears the roads up. So their roads have been significantly impacted as a result of the tourism part of it, as well as owners and people that live there. But tourism does have a significant impact to a greater extent in the Tahoe Basin. And for us, that's the Myers area, where the county's interest, as opposed to other areas within the county. But there are other areas with VHRs that, again, there's tourist impacts to those things. So that was the big change. And a lot of the monies that have been going from TOT most recently have been going to our fire agencies to support things like search and rescue, recalls from VHRs and those kinds of things. So we forced them to justify that, and there was a significant amount of money that went to special district, particularly fire, to try to offset the impact of tourism to their organizations. And to me, that's the right thing to do. We have to use that money wisely. And so it's shifted a whole lot from what it was before, which was promoting tourism, to where are the impacts from it and where do we put that money? Now, that said, there's other organizations that benefit. Our Veterans Affairs Commission gets a portion of the TOT tax. So there's a lot of things that TOT tax is used for, but it is a discretionary use by the board. But when it's all said and done, it's really general fund money of a different color. But we at least can designate and appropriate monies from TOT back to where we think the impacts are and make that correct. That's what we tried to do. Very good. Not seeing any other comments. Let's go on to our leadership team progress reports, and public safety is number one. And I don't see anybody from the sheriff's department or our CHP. We have fire, right? So Chief Johnson, welcome. Doing good.
Welcome to your house.
Thanks for the
Short walk.
invitation.
Short walk. Chief Lilienthal was actually been deployed to the Electra fire. He's actually back tonight, but as I told him, go home and get rest. We had a structure fire coming right down the road, so of course he got suited up and ran right over to that. So we've got a fire going right down the road, but it looks like it's being contained. At any rate, just an update on what we're doing here at EDH Fire. We've got a new fire marshal, full-time fire marshal will be starting tomorrow morning. And our intent is to maybe bring her to your next community council meeting, introduce you to her, and then you can ask any question you'd like. She comes with a wealth of experience, 26 years in the business, specifically community risk reduction. Previously or just left her department as a deputy fire marshal. So she's well-tooled to handle what we need, and that'll be helpful for us. Just a few days ago, over the weekend, we had a fast-moving vegetation fire down in Latrobe that threatened several structures for a few moments. Until we were able to get that contained. So kudos to the crews for jumping on that, along with CAL FIRE with air resources. And it started from a lithium-ion battery. That's one of those that we'll be talking about and producing a public safety announcement about lithium-ion batteries. I attended a statewide meeting just recently, and it was very eye-opening for me, 31 years in the fire service. And I will tell you, I will never charge my e-bike in the house again. I'll only charge it outside. But more to come on that one. We'll have plenty of information on that one. I'm shocked at how
How about
fast.
the garage? Is that okay? That's where mine is. But
I would do it outside.
really?
Yes, it was that unnerving to me. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And scooters, Teslas, Tesla walls, all those are lithium-ion batteries. More to come on that one.
Fire?
What's
Yeah,
that?
How large was the fire?
The fire ended up being an acre and a half, and we're going to highlight some technology that we're using that's available from state resources from OES and CAL FIRE. Originally came from Southern California, where they're using satellites and a computer to look at fires that start. They're able to pick them up by satellite, a heat signature. They do a calculation on where that fire is going and what it's likely to do. So they give us a 3-hour potential, and it'll automatically pick the camera that's closest to it, and it'll hone in on that. So we'll know we got a real fire, and the potential from this it's just staggering. And so the fact that our folks were able to get there so quick off Beaver Pond, which is a little ways out there, and stop it was huge, because because that fire would probably still be burning today. So kudos to them on that, and the technology was definitely helpful. The 4th of July, we had another fire up in Toronto. It's a barbecue pit fire that was against the wall, so it did some damage to one of the structures up there. And we had another fire, one of our very large homes down in Watermark last night, that remained small, but only because it was another barbecue fire. We were able to get in there and knock that down before it got bigger, so that was.
Those
very-
illegal? I mean,
No, so these, when I say barbecue fires, they're barbecue pits, and so those are legal to use. And so the second one last night or 2 nights ago, that was actually in an island in a barbecue. It was a barbecue pit in an island. The challenge is you need to make sure they're installed appropriately. So if you have to be non-combustible materials. So if you're installing that right over OSB or 2x4s or something like that, that's not the correct way.
so, and no wood burning
No
fire
wood
pits
burning,
allowed.
Correct. These are all propane and natural gas.
Right.
So that's what those were. Now, the training center is going vertical, so that's exciting. The CMU is actually going up, and they've got the basement of building 1 almost done. It blows my mind every time I go out there how much work they're getting done. They're working on building 2, and then also the outdoor training classroom. I'm happy to report that they are on time and on budget. That's always exciting and good news. Firefighter Netherton was chosen as a Rotary Firefighter of the Year. Excuse me. Sorry. Covering the district while they're out there as well. He was chosen as a Rotary Firefighter of the Year, so congratulations to him and his family. If you don't know about him, he's been with us for about 5 years now. He was in the Army for 8 years, and he's been a great paramedic. He also, as a firefighter, led the entire Santa Run for 2021. And so that is typically led by one of the chief officers. And so part of our succession plan in developing our folks, we allowed him to do that, and he knocked it out of the park. So kudos. It's a big, big task and duty, especially when you're trying to shepherd a bunch of chief officers and captains around. He did a great job. Let's see, several employees, they celebrated their 15 years of service, so that was fun to do that with them. 2 new firefighters began, 1 engine each was deployed to the Rices Fire and the Electra Fire. We also deployed our ISU, or Incident Support Unit, with one of our captains and Chief Lilienthal down to the Electra Fire. And then finally, just as a reminder, EDH Fire does have a request for TOT funds for a lake boat to really work on and address the impacts and effects that travel and tourism has out there at Folsom Lake. We're out there quite a bit. You know, over the 4th of July weekend, we had at least 3 contacts. One was a fatal, unfortunately, but we have a lot of responses out to our lake and our waterways, and so that would be tremendously helpful to the agency. With that, I'll take any questions you might have.
I'll just mention that should come up September this year when the board does its final budget adjustments, and we're hopeful there's excess TOT tax so that we can get that funded and go. I know Sac Metro's been really busy on the river lately
Yes.
with all their runs and stuff. There was a drowning out there, and so yeah, it's a dangerous time of the year for people who think just taking a raft and throwing it out to
Absolutely.
drink to start with. That's double trouble, but anyway.
Yeah, it really is. And just the incident we had out on the river heading down to the mouth of the lake, that was a 5-hour incident for us. So the resources were out there for that long. We had boats in the water for that long, but we can definitely use the help in getting the appropriate equipment out there.
Excellent.
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any fires as a result of fireworks?
We have 0 fires as a result of fireworks in our district. We thought that might be one down in Latrobe, and we actually found the battery. So we had no reports of fires. There were, however, several reports of fireworks, and we can see them clearly. I also might add, I almost forgot the 2nd of July fireworks event down in Town Center.
Yeah.
What a tremendous success. It's a little bit more close and intimate. It's not as tall and as big as they used to be, but that just has to be with, we have to be able to shoot them off safely. And so we were using the tops of some of the buildings and then also the 2 pond areas. And so we're just not going up as high just due to the fallout. Very well attended. There had to be tens of thousands of people there. I don't have an exact count, but it was packed.
We were not there. We were up on top of the hill here.
Did you see it?
On Wilson, yeah, well,
Okay.
well, there's, and there's quite a crowd right on the
Yes,
top of the hill.
absolutely.
And we went down the hill and scoped out a nice spot where we could see through the oak trees.
Okay.
And it was, yeah, I did notice, yeah, visibly a lot lower.
Lower.
But we were able to take it in, so that was great.
Outstanding. It was a little bit nerve wracking as a fire chief to allow somebody to shoot fireworks off of the top of buildings.
Tall
Took
buildings,
the
yeah.
appropriate precautions, so, yeah. So, anything else? Outstanding, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move beyond public safety. Does anybody want to volunteer to go next? All right, then I'm gonna call, we'll go down the list. In economic development, Glenn is not here, but he did want to let everybody know about ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, small business grants. And the grants will be available to companies who reported 5 or fewer employees in 2021 and 2022 and can show lost revenue in the 2 tax years before that, which is 2019 and 2020. So we were trying to get micro businesses and make sure that they got some support of this federal ARPA money. We did small businesses as the first round of monies, and then we did nonprofits. And now with some of the remaining funds, we're looking at authorizing these micro business funds. And I think the limit is $25,000, I think, per applicant. So it's not a lot of money, but if you had significant losses, it's something that helps you recover and hopefully, maintain your business or get your business off and running again. So that's the current focus with ARPA funds. The application process will be starting very soon. If it isn't already, I haven't heard of the date that's going out, but it should happen pretty quickly. So if you know of a small business in El Dorado County that was significantly impacted by COVID, make sure they're knowledgeable of this grant opportunity, and we'll get the word out on our social media and other means, but a word of mouth office is good too. So if you know people that might have been in that predicament, let them know and get them connected with the grant application. So that was the one thing that we had to report on that. Unless, Cindy, did you have anything else you knew of under economic development?
No, but I'll put links to all the information on that.
Right. So whenever we mention something significant like the grant, when we do the minutes, we will try to include a link to that or a website, website link or another link that will get you access to where the application form might be or more information. So we talk about it here. We want to follow through with easy access. So it's important that you're on our email distribution list to receive the minutes if you want to be able to share that information, because that's where it's most readily available, as well as the social media platform. So we'll go with that. So infrastructure. John.
Well, it's not on here, but I was out of state at the last hearing, and I just wanted to comment briefly on Central, on our decision to recommend denial. I just wanted to say I was very appreciative of, there I go again, forgetting. Very appreciative of my fellow commissioners as well as our staff. I mean, the countless hours that everyone put in for years. So I can't say enough. Staff did a bang-up job, as well as my commissioners, so my fellow commissioners. But with that said, yes. Yeah.
I watched that particular hearing, and I think we were very fortunate to have John as the chairman at that time, because the manner in which the flow among the commissioners continued, I thought, very productively and not confrontationally, I think was so much enhanced by the way John handled that particular hearing. I thought it was spectacular.
I appreciate it. Had a lot of help. But,
recognizing there were 4 commissioners that hadn't been part of the previous public reviews, the planning commission hearing that was held at District Church, they were not part of that. They were members of the community in large measure, but they weren't directly part of it. So there was a lot of history discussions. I know planning staff spent a lot of time. John spent a lot of time trying to give them the information. But no, I agree. I think that was very well conducted, very orderly, and things progressed to the point of a decision within one day, the same day it was brought forward. And
I think you still owe me a lunch on that. Yeah, okay. We had a gentleman's bet.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll have to happen one of these days.
Wanted to get that on the record. So.
Or not.
You want the IOU to publish in the paper?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
maybe on the
you wish.
minutes, so.
No, but that was quite the challenge to try to get through it in one more hearing, because people had expressed themselves so much via email and other things, and between APAC's report and a lot of other reports that were out there, there was just a ton of flood of information for a lot of people to try to digest.
We're still getting emails.
Yeah.
I don't Don't know why, but, but, oh well, so. Okay, so, the one thing that is listed here is, Serrano HOA's request for a four-way stop at the intersection of Greenview and Serrano Parkway. That's at their main entrance into Serrano, up on the hill. And so there has been some concern and there's been discussion back and forth between, the homeowners association and the transportation department in respect to the need and desire for a all-way stop there. So I'm not gonna get too much into the weeds, other than, there is going to be a traffic advisory committee meeting this Wednesday that's gonna discuss that. There's a draft report or study in engineering, what they call an engineering and traffic survey, to look at the data and to look at the facts of the matter and analyze it, and then have some discussion, have the public chime in, as well as the commission members and staff as well. So, as it stands currently, there's issues of sight distance, there's issues of, yes, there are accidents. But in respect to looking at it from a technical standpoint, it doesn't mean it won't happen, but as it stands now currently, it doesn't meet the warrants for traffic volumes as well as the number of accidents. But they're gonna have a good discussion concerning that on this Wednesday. Now Cindy is,
Describe who they is, who's on the committee?
oh yeah, the traffic
Help them
advisory.
understand that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, the committee members are Rafael Martinez, DOT Director, Brian Mullins, the Deputy Director of Maintenance, the Commander Rick Hatfield from CHP, from the Placerville office, and Lieutenant Lance Bryant of the Sheriff's Department. And we also have someone representing our Risk Management Office, Helena Wilkinson. So that is what comprises of the committee members. And so,
But law enforcement has to basically be in agreement with these things, because they have the enforcement issue, right? So that's why they need to be part of the committee that weighs in and says, okay, we think this is reasonable, we can make this change, it's consistent, and we'll have to increase our enforcement, at least initially, to make sure people recognize that this has changed. There's a stop sign here, and you can't ignore it. We talked about some things like flashing beacons and all that. I'm hoping we don't have to go to that, but if we ever get to it, maybe.
in my last 8 years with DOT, I was in traffic operations where I prepared a lot of these reports. And so they did a very good job. A lot of them are centered around speed zones that need to be updated every 5 years to be legitimate. But sometimes you have situations like this come up, that the department analyzes as well. So Cindy, will that be in the minutes, how to log on to the Zoom meeting? Okay, so I just wanted to announce that link, because it's not on a regular hearing list, for the Board of Supervisors and stuff. But so that link will be there in the minutes, so you can go ahead and chime in. And there are opportunities for public comments where you could call in and voice your opinion. So feel free to do that. So I would encourage you to do that. That'll be this Wednesday at 9 o'clock, July 13th at 9 o'clock. Okay, yes.
Yes, we are. So first from the conference room, and then we have one online member that would like to also comment, so please.
Thank you, Catherine Henderson, General Manager for Serrano Auto Owners Association. We did a survey of the members over a year ago who made a request for a stop sign at that location. We then submitted that information to the Department of Transportation, to the county, well over a year ago. They came back and asked for letters of consent or affirmation from individual members from neighboring villages around that stop sign location. We obtained those and submitted that. We've been told from the beginning that traffic numbers alone provided eligibility for a stop sign at that location, regardless of stop intersections along Serrano Parkway. We did just have a horrific accident last Friday, second one in 6 months.
Mhm.
That has been, which created a really dangerous environment. The Village J5 commercial center up at Safeway has created increased traffic since any study that may have been done in regards to traffic numbers. They all fly up Serrano Parkway. What goes up must come down, and it's at that intersection where take a look at that intersection, give it significant consideration and support for a stop sign, given that the association has been told by members in the Department of Transportation that it was an eligible intersection, and it's been over a year and a half.
Mhm.
So I would just implore you to give it serious consideration and support it.
Yeah, well, that's something that's done at that, it's not anything that's done here, as I'm sure you know, it's done at that hearing. That's where those arguments and those discussions are, that will occur concerning that. I'm sure you will, so appreciate it, so. Anything?
Very good, thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have also Don Sacco, who's online, so can we
Somebody else
connect him?
Okay.
Is there somebody else? I didn't see another hand. Okay.
Okay, Dan, Don.
I believe I'm online now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for the opportunity. I understand that Wednesday is the time that we would make our comments more fully regarding the request for the stop sign. I appreciate the fact it's on the agenda today. I think Catherine did a very good job in describing the overall situation. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. As she mentioned, the traffic has increased dramatically over the last 2 years because of the continued development, not only in Serrano, but the development off of Bass Lake Road itself is creating more traffic up Serrano Parkway. I would note that there are often events at the country club, which means that exiting Greenview onto Serrano Parkway during certain times of the day and evening can be much more significant than what is generally monitored during the course of an average day. And the last thing that I would mention, and again, I understand these are comments for Wednesday, if you drive up Serrano Parkway, particularly past the intersection of Silver Valley, going up Serrano Parkway, there are a number of stop signs at locations that have less traffic than the one that we're requesting at Greenview and Serrano. And I did have an opportunity to communicate with Director or Superintendent Brown earlier today. We have no history of why those stop signs were approved versus the request that we have in today. But I do believe, I am not in favor of having to stop every block. On the other hand, we have owner concerns about the safety of pulling out, particularly left turns on Serrano Parkway, and would note that while the average speed may be within limits, there are certain times of day and certain drivers who speed up that parkway as if it's a racetrack, and that doesn't help the situation either. Last comment, there unfortunately was some miscommunication over the last several months between us and the DOT, and unfortunately because of that, there is anticipation in the community among those interested in the stop sign that it will be placed. The misunderstanding led us to believe that it would be placed, and obviously this is under debate now. So having said that, thank you for the opportunity to comment, and we will participate on Wednesday. Thanks, John.
On those intersections, I don't know specifically the ones you're talking about, those two other intersections. What I do know, I have a little institutional knowledge. When Serrano Parkway was built, when nothing was up there before, if I recall, if it's the same intersections that I'm thinking of, that those stop signs went in with the development, right, wrong, or indifferent. I think it was something that the project, the developer had proposed, and DOT must have signed off at the time. That's not normally how you do stuff, but that's what was done. And again, there was no roads up there. It was brand new, and I believe that's why those went in at the time. So.
Yeah, I do believe that. I'm not aware of the full details of that, but I do. There were stop signs added, for example, at the Village Green, well after the development was started. And there are, of course, stop signs along at Collings Tree, Villaggio, Greenview, and Serrano Parkway on the other end. So they do exist. Some of them were added after the development and well after the houses were already up there. So whatever the history is, don't know, as you indicated, but there are a number of stop signs. They do their job, and it is safer to make particularly left turns coming out of those roadways.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank Don. Any other comments or questions on this? I do plan on dialing in and attending and listening to the conversation on Wednesday, just to keep aware of what's going on there and what other steps may have to be looked at. But yeah, so we'll put it off till Wednesday at 9 a.m. You said, right?
Yep,
So
9 o'clock.
comes out. Thank you for that, John. Is there anything else under infrastructure that you wanted to?
Oh, yeah, thank you. We have a rezone, Cheplick up on, you know where the water tower is up on Hollow Oak? It's right below that.
It was Morrison, and now it's Sierra de Dios.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's a small development. I think it's like 7 acres or something like that, where they're proposing a rezone from RE10 to R1A, if I recall correctly. And so, so we'll be hearing that on this Thursday. So.
Very good. Okay, not seeing any other comments or questions. Let's go on to good governance. Richard.
Good evening. Yes, just one item relative to the last election. It is kind of interesting. It was projected that El Dorado County would have basically about a 61% turnout of voters. And that was a projection based upon the current ballots counted, et cetera, at the time the stats were put together. It's also very interesting that it's the rural counties that tend to have the very high voter turnout, such as Alpine, Calaveras, Inyo, and Lassen. I guess maybe with more attention paid to how things impact people in the rural urban environments, contrary to some of the very low turnouts in the urban areas of the state. So unfortunately, in the general scheme of things, the gross numbers come out of the urban areas. And so much is dictated to us in that regard. The second thing that's of even more relevance now, and the due compliments to the Village Life, they did an excellent article on the charter commission process. Hats off to their team. And the charter commission, it comes about vis-a-vis the state constitution, in that the counties could select to be charter counties or be general law counties. And general law counties generally are governed by the rules established by the legislature with a certain amount of wiggle room in there. The charter counties started out having a lot more latitude about running their own governments in their own particular counties. Over time, the difference between the general law counties and the charter counties has really melded closer and closer together. The charter review is required to be considered every 5 years. And that is what has occurred now with the, I should turn the microphone on, apologize for that. Will occur now. There's a formation meeting going to be scheduled for August 1st. And fundamentally what will occur there is a framework established for the meetings and the general rules and guidelines that the committee will have. It will correspond to and comply with the Brown Act. There will be public announced meetings for participation by the public and to hear the various topics that have been proposed to be considered. And all this committee does is consider them and then ultimately makes recommendation to the boards of supervisors, enhancing those recommendations with the pros and the cons that have been heard, as well as the committee's recommendation about those particular things. In the prior charter review of 2018, the grand jury in the county had proposed certain changes relative to term limits and elected officials, and those were the fundamental issues there. The board discussed several areas that they thought would require, the Board of Supervisors would be required, and that had to do, once again, with supervisors' terms, whether they should be limited to 2 terms, also whether the number of supervisors in the county should be maybe increased from 5 to 7, staggering election cycles for various elected county heads, and term limits for those department heads. There was a discussion about Proposition 172 funds, which are public safety funds, but there seemed to be some hesitancy on the part of the majority of the Board of Supervisors whether they wanted that taken outside their realm of review and discretion as to what should be done with that. There was some discussion about the Civil Service Commission selection process, which I found a little hard to follow since I'm on the Civil Service Commission, and it didn't seem like what was being said is the way it is currently being done. So
Yeah.
Sometimes people at the steering wheel don't always know where the car is going. And I think the interesting one was suggestion of the implementation of 7 supervisorial districts versus 5, which be interesting to hear the discussion on that. So there'll be an announcement about the meeting dates. I think our district will be very well represented because Mr. White will be an alternate member, and will, I think, bring a lot of good experience and knowledge about his engagement with the several government entities that he has done through APAC and through the fire board. So I really look forward to working with him as a team member on that. So, but
And
that's
I'll
about
mention
it.
that is coming up in the Board of Supervisors agenda for July 19th, if you haven't heard of him, the appointment for you as the alternate replacing Rachel Mitchell. And we got a letter into our office, email that Rachel just had so many things going on, she didn't feel like she could give us adequate coverage should Richard not be available. And I think it's important for the alternate to keep track of what's going on, obviously, and not be totally absent from meetings when you get to the 5th meeting and stuff, and then you're interjected because of whatever reason. So I think with Tim's accepting that, it really gives us a very strong link because of the relationship that's already there, the communication paths. Tim's involved with a lot of communities, and his legal background, I think, all play into, we got a winning team here, I think, and I think likewise for the other committee members. They've selected, the other supervisors have selected some very well-known, very involved people from the past. So, yeah, it should be an interesting discussion once we get started and ultimately it comes to a conclusion. But I'll just recognize that before anything gets changed with the charter, it has to go back to the voters. So if people think the charter committee is going to recommend things and the board's going to adopt it, then no, it has to go back to the voters to change the charter. So if things are recommended in a strong sense to the Board of Supervisors, then the Board of Supervisors will have to weigh in on that, and ultimately there will be a ballot measure. But we're not certainly rushing to get to the November ballot. We recognize that's not going to happen. Originally, that was kind of the intent, but there's just been too many delays, so it would either have to be a special election or wait for a longer period of time if we do get a recommendation to put it on the ballot and move forward with specific changes. So Charter Review Committee is a total different process than most other committees or commissions. So if you haven't experienced that, I'd encourage you to read our newspaper articles and stuff, because I'm sure they'll keep us all informed of how those steps are taken. But public input is requested and expected from the standpoint of it's going to come to the vote of the people. People ought to weigh in early and not be surprised, right?
I think from my experience 4 years prior, I think some of these issues need time to season with the public so they better understand the benefits of some of these proposed changes, rather than just say, we don't want to change anything. and I'm too busy to read about it. And I think a couple good ideas proposed by the Board of Supervisors last time actually didn't have enough time to be engaged with the public by knowledgeable and informative people to maybe sway the public's view on them. So a little more time, maybe a year or two even, might be very valuable.
I'll just mention that the reason the last charter review committee was put together is because of grand jury findings and recommendations for changes in the charter. That's what really drove it. That ended up not affecting any change. There was nothing changed in the charter. This year's grand jury report, there's I think 7 or 8 items, and it had nothing with respect to charter. So clearly that can be taken off the list. At the time we talked about at the board meeting, we didn't know what was in the grand jury report. Those are all very confidential discussions and meetings until they come forward with their report that has the official findings and then the recommendations. So we now have those, but there's no charter review committee tasks associated with the grand jury report, which is probably a good thing, right? At least that's the way I feel. Very good, Richard. Thank you for that. Any questions? Yeah.
Have there been any ballot measures that have passed as a result of the charter review in recent history?
Not recent if you talk about the last,
20 years?
well, 20 years I can't speak to. I don't know. I don't go back that far.
Well, I mean, does this process actually work?
If there were, I would be surprised. I think it can work if the public becomes aware
That's
of
I
what the
believe
opportunity is and really listens to the discussion about what the pros and cons are. Business as usual is not necessarily the best answer. So, but there are people who want no change, and it's not broken in their house, so, and they have that right. I mean, everybody has a right to vote how they want, but the real task is to try to get people informed of what the choices are if it does come on a ballot measure, why, what the pros and cons arguments are, read them, weigh in the way you think is appropriate.
Well, you can hear my concern. He's gonna work really hard. He's gonna work really hard, and nothing's going to happen.
I can't guarantee anything will happen, but that's our process, right? I mean, if we don't work really hard, we'll never get the opportunity that it could happen, so, yeah.
It's called government.
Yeah.
I have better things to do.
Yeah, well, this one requires a vote of the people, so ultimately, it's not a administrative decision, it's not a board of supervisors decision, which with charter concerns, I think it has to be in that category. I mean, we have a lot of things in our charter that if the public really knew what was in it, they would probably be surprised, but they don't bother to understand it, then, so be it. So, anyway.
That's to Richard's point, is that if there's a discussion before it's even a ballot measure and people are informed, when they see the ballot measure, they say, okay, I remember hearing about this. But when you pick up your sample ballot and go, what? It's kind of too late.
I'll just mention, we're the only county of 58 counties in California who have an elected surveyor. Why is that such a special position in El Dorado County? I asked the question because you gotta understand the history of who were on the board of supervisors at various points in time. I think that's the answer, but so be it. But we're the only county, we're unique because no other county has that requirement. Why does El Dorado County still have that requirement in place? Because the succession of the surveyor was the deputy surveyor when our surveyor passed away. And the deputy surveyor was easily elected in this primary cycle, so he's gonna be the surveyor. So if you're not getting a lot of public interest in running for those things, what's the value of an elected surveyor who served within the department that could have been appointed, actually was appointed as an interim by the board of supervisors and then ultimately became the elected supervisor. So is there really a lot of value in that? And there's a cost to a ballot measure. Anything that's on the ballot costs you money. Is that something we really want to perpetuate? I don't know.
How hard is it then for the committee to come up with a proposal, say, we have to pay for this ballot measure, costs us X number of dollars, nobody really cares about it, so why don't we just dump it? And anybody who opens the ballot, you only need a percentage of people who actually vote, right? Pass a ballot measure. And the chances of people saying, no, I want to continue to spend this money is not really that great.
So we can only, any county agency, including the commission, can only inform
Yeah, lobbying,
campaign
yeah.
for anything that's on the ballot. So if there is a campaign effort, it's gotta be done by an outside entity, a third party of some kind. Which is why, in part, a lot of these TOT tax measures are very difficult to do. In fact, we probably wouldn't have come forward with the exception of our auditor controller and treasurer tax collector volunteering to help lead the charge in the campaign. Because they see value in increasing the TOT tax from the standpoint of impacts to tourism can be better paid for. Road maintenance, primarily, we're talking about that. In fact, that's what the ballot measure is all about, is increase it specifically for purposes of road maintenance, go to DOT. So they got behind it and backed it. But before that, we couldn't find anybody to be the leader of the campaign. Because it's a thankless job.
And the recent history, even just in Dorado County, for any sort of increase in taxes, it's been a pretty hard no, or assessments, local fire districts, they can't even get funding passed for a fire. We love our fire department, but a lot of fire districts, they just can't even get ready to approve more money for keeping a firefighter on, or 2 firefighters, or an engine. So, yeah, it's a hard thing to win approval on, and if you can't go out and actively advocate for it, you have to have
That's why I
somebody.
really wanted Prop 172 as part of the charter, but I just differ in the way, my background and my experience with the shortchanged special districts, particularly fire in this county, I don't know. But we'll see how that ends up. That's in a committee review to determine what we can do there. Maybe it will come back at some point to the charter. Because what I would like to see is the voters get a chance to vote on where that money should go, ultimately. Any other any other questions or comments for Richard? Not seeing any in the room, not seeing any hands up. Thank you for that report. Very, very good. And we can move on, I think, to healthy communities. And our representative, Angie's not able to be with us this evening, but I will mention that we have scheduled the date for our 3rd Mental Health Forum special meeting. We've had 2 in the past, as many of you know. Dr. Colbert was asking when the next one is going to be scheduled, and we now have that date. It's September 19th. We have gotten agreement for the participation of the El Dorado County Community Health Center to participate as one of the guest speakers, and in particular, their director of, I think it's called Director of Behavioral Health within their organization. And if you don't know, they're building a brand new facility on Missouri Flat Road, so they're really expanding their operations, their capabilities to deliver services to the county. And a lot of that is both mental health, physical health, et cetera. So they're going to talk about the behavioral health or the mental health part of it. And then also, the Shingle Springs Rancheria Tribe has agreed, because they have a community health center, to also participate in that same forum. So those are the 2 entities we haven't heard from. And then Health and Human Services, Behavioral Health Commission has also agreed to participate. They participated as a guest speaker in the first one. We wanted to kind of bring them back to the third one to talk about the progress that's been made since that first forum. And in particular, the interaction between Sutter Health and Marshall, Sutter Health Hospital, Sutter Hospital and Marshall Hospital to adopt a program that was kind of piloted in Sacramento County and Sutter to bring that idea to El Dorado County for Marshall to pick up and run. And it deals with teenage, adolescent, special mental health services that aren't available in our county right now. It's a specialized area. And so they will be the 3rd primary guest speaker associated with that. So that'll kind of wrap that whole special series up. Got the dates identified. We've got this facility reserved. We got confirmation on that, so you can mark your calendars. September 19th at 5 p.m. I think is what we've all agreed to. Is when we're going to get started, similar to our regular community council meetings. And so we'll look forward to that discussion and audience. And I'm sure there will be probably a little bit of discussion about what we're doing with our shelter and our homeless as well, because you can't hardly talk about mental health and needs and services and not address at some point. Part of that's the homeless population that frequents the emergency rooms of our hospitals quite often. So any questions or comments? That was pretty simple, I think, straightforward. And then we'll go on to APAC. So what's going on July 13th? Anything
Well,
good?
real slow. You can all take the night off. Our meeting for July 13th is canceled. We don't have, but do attend that traffic advisory committee meeting. The most compelling aspect of our meeting tonight is this announcement. Yeah, there simply aren't enough new project status changes or things coming up that would warrant us getting together and bringing people out. So please enjoy your July. Our next meeting will be on August 10th at 6:30 p.m. in person here in this room, and then also via Zoom if you can't attend. The two things that might have been mentioned in our meeting is that the La Canada project over there off of, well, back there, Malcolm Dixon and Salmon Falls, back in that area. They have a new tentative map with a new tentative map number for Unit 1, but there's no project data on the link and track it. And it's been up for, I think, 2 weeks. So there's nothing on there, but that's coming. And we know also that there's a couple other things in front of us. The Green Valley Road lane shift is still ongoing over there in front of Pleasant Grove Middle School. So please drive carefully through there. It's a 4-way stop now. It's kind of confusing because there's normally a left turn lane and they've converted it. It's literal 4-way. So everybody stop and it gets kind of narrow. So watch driving through there. John had mentioned the Cheplick tentative map, and that dates back to 2005. It's part of the Bass Lake Hills specific plan. Yeah, it's like 10 acres. They're talking about 7 residential lots and 2 landscape lots, and they're going to rezone from residential estate 10 acre to 1 acre plan development with that overlay. So actually, I talked to Commissioner Nevis about that. He said, "Are you going to send anything in?" No, we're not sending anything in. I mean, it's an old project. It's very small. The resources for us are very limited. The other thing to remind everybody is that, you know, we have a lot of projects pending, but nothing of note that's new. I mean, we're talking about Creekside Village specific plan at the south end of the business park. They had a scoping meeting and they had issued their notification of preparation for their draft EIR. We haven't had anything lately on that. We know the Town and Country Village, the Mohana project down there at the corner of Bass Lake and Country Club, Generations at Green Valley, which was the former Dixon Ranch, that's coming back. And I talked to Aiden, and when they're ready, they'll come and talk to us. The Carson Creek Village specific plan, which is that real small development down there towards the business park, high density, a lot of multifamily, Costco EDH 52, the Sophia Parkway Neighborhood Retail Center, which is right at the corner of Sophia Parkway. Will be sort of adjacent to the EDH Folsom self-storage project. The Villages at Town Center West, which has new ownership technically, and I have not heard from them in a while. And then just some items like you know, the Marble Valley specific plan, Lime Rock Valley, parts of those are in Cameron Park. But just to remind people, those scoping meetings happened in 2013, and we're still waiting for, you know, the draft EIRs on those. So I struggle with that because it's nearly 10 years ago and we haven't even had any sort of project documentation. In fact, most of the documents don't exist on the county website anymore. So we have a few that we saved, but that's it. So, but I know I had talked to Parker Development last year, and they said that, you know, when they were looking at vehicle miles traveled for the Central project, that they were confident they were solid on the numbers for VMT. So I know they're working on it, and I know that it'll be coming soon. So lots of things coming before us, and when it's time to work, we need help. So if you're interested in volunteering, I hate slamming the same people all the time with this volunteer work. I know my wife doesn't appreciate it when I say, I can't do that right now. I'm, you know, doing this. So take a small piece, anything you're interested in learning about or providing some feedback. APAC is willing to hear you, and we want to help you provide your input. So with that, just brief.
Thank you for that. Okay. John, if you're interested in land development and projects, you might contact APAC because they are always looking for help. And that organization goes back to 1981.
You were there.
Well, I know.
Okay.
I always have to keep community council and APAC
Yeah.
separate. 81 was APAC, 83 was community council. So it has a long history of various people contributing on a volunteer basis to try to make the community of El Dorado better. And it's really come to maturity under John's leadership and the website.
Tim's leadership.
Everybody's leadership, right? The current leadership is outstanding. Engagement is much better than it's ever been. And I think our voice is much stronger when it goes to decisions at the planning commission level and at board of supervisors level. our community is represented, and that's what we were trying to accomplish years ago, so.
Yeah, and we have really good engagement, even like with the planning commission. I talked to John quite a bit, sorry. And Commissioner Nevis emails me quite often, goes, hey, are you gonna say anything about this? You know, there's small things, like, obviously we're not, you know, but we had spoken before about the planning commission, how effective that group is right now with John leading it. Things that, you know, it didn't seem reasonable for like the Silver Springs extension to call you and say, hey, John, what's going on with the median, you know, the weeds in the median in that brand new road that are 4.5 feet tall? Yeah, he brought it up at the hearing. You know, there's nothing in that hearing that they could do about it. And Commissioner Nevis asked about that too. So we have a lot of engaged people that are appointed, and we have a lot of engaged volunteers. So the more people that participate, the better results are. So.
There's a lot of Johns in that club, by the way.
I spelled mine correctly.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. Thank you for that report. Any questions or comments for John Davy? All right, Cindy, please.
Okay, for the things that are happening in El Dorado Hills, the farmers market continues to happen every Sunday from 8 to 1 p.m. over at Town Center. It's been very popular. I've been by there. There's a lot of people going there. So some great stuff there. Also, every Thursday, they are continuing until September 9th, live at the Boulevard concerts at the Stephen Young Amphitheater down there in Town Center. They're at Thursdays at 7 o'clock, 7 to 9 p.m. The El Dorado Hills CSD is having a concert this week on July 15th, and that will be at their big community park. It's starting at 7. And the CSD is continuing their park parties, and on July 27th, the next park party will be at the Stephen Harris Park, and that will start at 5 p.m. They provide free food and different events for kids. And then on July 29th, the CSD is going to do a stargazing at Bass Lake. At the Bass Lake Regional Park will be at 9 o'clock. So that was a new event that they're doing this year. So that's what's happening. I didn't put the National Night Out because it was August 5th, and our next meeting, council meeting, is the 1st. So I was going to talk about that for the next one. So, and all these events that I talk about will be on the supervisor's webpage. Need more information.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any questions for Cindy? Shouldn't be bored this summer. There's a lot of things going on. So get out there and enjoy. So as she mentioned, our next council meeting is August the 1st, Monday, and that'll be at 5 p.m. again. We have scheduled 2 members of our El Dorado County Public Health Organization to be the guest speakers, Kristen Becker and Olivia Byron Cooper. We'll have conversations with them and with our treasurer tax collector Karen Coleman to get the best fit, because if Karen can do September, that's great. If she can't do September, maybe we can talk about changing it around. So we'll need to reach out and coordinate with Karen first of all to get her availability, and then get her rescheduled as soon as we can and move on with that. So any other go backs, any final comments? I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised online. So again, thank you for your participation this evening, and this meeting is hereby adjourned. Look forward to seeing you next month.
It's on the was it the 29th? Yeah. And it's at 9 o'clock. I think, I'm trying to remember if they said it, or they said to bring if you have your own telescope.
Bring like beach towels or